Hello guys, welcome back to Unlimited Automation. So today we're going to cover database testing part 5. So in part 5 we will be discussing how to test stored procedures. Now in the previous video of database testing, that is in part 4, we discussed how we will develop the stored procedures. Like there are different ways of stored procedures, with parameters, without parameters. So for each of those stored procedures, how will you develop those stored procedures? And in this video I'm going to discuss how you are going to test those developed stored procedures, right? So to understand this video you need to go to part 4 as well. So let's start. Now in this part 5 we will be discussing primarily on how to test stored procedures. So what we will be checking is basically we have to first develop our stored procedures. We have to basically like in our database, in our MySQL database, we write queries. So those queries, if we want to reuse it again and again, or if there are some complex cases, so how we will be checking those complex cases at any point of time. So for those scenarios, basically stored procedures are required. Now we have already developed stored procedures that I already said I covered in part 4. Now in this video I'm going to tell you how we are going to use those stored procedures, or like how we are going to test those stored procedures and check whether things are properly working or not. Okay, now basically if you check, there are some common test scenarios, general test scenarios for stored procedure. So first is basically we do check stored procedure exists in database or not. Okay, so we do check the stored procedure exists in database or not. Then we check like stored procedure with valid input data. Okay, then we also check the stored procedure handles exceptions, like whether how it handles exceptions when you pass invalid input data. Like your stored procedure is ready, but if I'm passing some invalid input data, if the data is not proper or if the data is not valid, then how does the stored procedure reacts, or how does it handles exceptions? So that is also a valid test scenario. Coming to next point or next scenario is checked stored procedure display results are expected or not. Okay, so the results that the stored procedure is generating, those are expected or not. Then we also check like how stored procedure is inserting data in proper tables or not, stored procedure is updating the data in proper tables or not, and also we need to check whether stored procedure is deleting data from proper tables or not. Also there is another scenario like check calling stored procedure from another stored procedure. So from one stored procedure you can call to other stored procedure. So these are the general test scenarios that you can come up with in your database that you are testing, right? So moving forward, these are the general scenarios that I talked about. Now before that, we have to consider, or we have to document our stored procedures. Like we have to document the list of all the stored procedures that are in our database. Okay, so as I previously showed in the videos in the database testing series, like our database is basically classic models that I downloaded from the web, like from the internet. So in part 4, whatever stored procedures I created, or whatever present stored procedures I have in my database, the list of all those stored procedures are what I have mentioned here. Okay, so now you can see stored procedure 1 is basically it selects all the records from the customer table. Now there are some input parameters whether you want to give, and what are the output parameters. Okay, then stored procedure 2 is select all customers by city. So it selects all the customers from a particular city, and it basically comes from the customers table, right? Then we have this output parameters. So input parameter is basically you have to give an input city, like you have to give a city name based on which you will be getting the result. There are no output parameters that you need to give. Store procedure 3 is basically I have in my database like select all customers by city and pin. So select customers from a particular city with a particular postal code from the table, and the input parameters are city name and postal code. So like this way, stored procedure 4 also is basically something like get order by customer number, like accepts customer number and returns the total numbers that were shipped or cancelled, resolved and disputed. Okay, so input parameters is customer number, output parameter is shipped, cancelled, resolved, disputed. So these are the output parameters that you need to create, and based on that it will be showing the result, and the input parameter is customer number. Okay, then coming to the stored procedure 5. So based on this condition, which I also demonstrated in the previous video of database testing, like if the country is USA, then it will take 2-day shipping. If the country is Canada, then it will take 3-day shipping. And if the country is any other country apart from USA or Canada, it will take a 5-day shipping. Okay, so I already created a stored procedure regarding that. So get the customer shipping, okay, where the input parameter would be customer number, and you will be getting the shipping time, like whether it's a 3-day or 2-day. Okay, so all these stored procedures are present in my database. Okay, now let me open yeah, so my SQL workbench I have to open. So let me log in. So I'm into my database now. Before checking all these things, okay, like before testing with my existing stored procedures, like as you can see, this is my database classic models, and these are the already created stored procedures. Okay, now what I need to do, basically I need to write the test cases. So based on this general test scenarios for testing stored procedures, which I mentioned, here are the test cases that I created based on whatever database or whatever stored procedure I have. So these are my stored procedure. So based on that, I need to test out what are the things I need to check whether my stored procedures are working or not, which I developed, right? So this is the test case that I've created. Now this is the functional test cases for stored procedure. Okay, so this is the functional test cases. Okay, so we have to give the test case ID, title or description of the test case, steps. Like steps, basically this is nothing we have to do here. Okay, this is nothing we have to do here, this has already been done here. Okay, so steps what with which actually uh, actually the steps, basically it's not basically we have done, but we have to do. So using these steps we are going to test. Now any test query we have to follow or not, that I'm coming. What these test queries are: test case data, expected result, and so on and so forth. Okay, and accordingly you can set your priority as well as status also, whichever is you think is priority. So accordingly you will be giving that, and you have to give the status, and accordingly you will be logging the bug report, right? So let's start with the first test case. So first test case is basically check the stored procedure exists or not. Okay, check the stored procedure exists or not. Meanwhile, let me just mark this with all bold so it will be easier. Okay, it will be easier to understand. So these are all the stored procedures. So this first test case we are going to consider to test whether the stored procedures are working or not is basically check stored procedure exists or not. So how we are going to check that? We are going to either execute this query or this query. Okay, so if I just write this, but before that we have to use our database, and we are using the database. Fine. Then we have to check show procedure status where DB equals to classic models. So it's fine. So all the list of stored procedures are showing 5 rows. So 5 stored procedures are there and 5 stored procedures are showing. Fine, perfect. So what we can do, we can also check with this query. It is basically like show procedure status where name equals to select all customers. Okay, why we have done that? Because just checking with a particular like name where select all customers. Okay, so select all customers is basically this store procedure. Okay, let me check with some other stored procedure. So this is also showing. So both the stored procedures are showing. Okay, so previously I checked with all the list of all the stored procedures, and here I am checking only one stored procedure. So show procedure status where name equals to this. So it's showing. So my first test case is passed, and here I do not have to give any test query. Test query is something where you need to add some input data or output data, like input data or output data with which you need to verify the test, like the stored procedure is working or not. So those are test query, and these are basically, there are some queries with which you will normally checking the steps. I mean, you will normally checking the stored procedure. Okay, so these are the steps that you have to check. Like, let's go to, so the first one is working. So working as expected. Okay, I'm not going to set the priority. I'm going to set the priority and status later. That depends on database to database or use cases. Okay, now checking with the second one, check stored procedure. This one, display all records from the customer table. Okay, so let me just use this one. So I have to check the stored procedure, select all customers by city and displaying all the records or not. Okay, so let me first call this. Now when I call this, it is showing some error. Procedure classic model, select all customers by city. Okay, so I have to select customer by city. Okay, select all customer by city, select all customer by city. Name is valid, but still I'm getting an error. What is the error? Incorrect number of arguments for procedure classic models. Okay, incorrect number of arguments for procedure classic models. Okay, so we have to give some arguments. Okay, because this stored procedure is select all customers by city, but we haven't given any city name. So here we require this test query. So here we require this parameter. So I am giving this parameter. Okay, now let me run this. So it shows all the customers with the city Singapore, and it's working. Okay, so this also I'm going to say like working as expected. Okay, now coming to the third test scenario, check stored procedure. Okay, so the previous one we checked by without parameters. Okay, now okay, so there is one case that I forgot to tell you. So the third one is actually working, not the second one. Okay, so what happened with the second case? With the second case, we just check without the parameter. Okay, so if I am just removing the parameter, and checking, so here it is showing this incorrect number of arguments. Okay, So you have to run some test query. Okay, why? Because this test query is required. Okay, we have to run this test query in order to check, because we have selected all customers by city, so here those test queries are required. Okay, we can, to run this stored procedure, either you have to give parameter like what I've given Singapore here. Okay, like what I've given Singapore here, or if you want to check without parameter, then in that case you have to use this script. I mean, you have to run this test query in order to check this. So when I'm checking this, so it's fine now. Okay, so now it's fine. Now I don't need any test data, so let me explain you once more this thing. So to run this stored procedure, I need to give a parameter because it's based on city. Now if I'm not giving any parameter, then what happens basically, if I'm not giving any parameter, so it will show me an incorrect number of arguments because it is not able to judge based on what city I'm going to select. So in that case we have to run a test query in order to execute this, and that is what we have written here, like test query. So to check this particular stored procedure without any parameter, we need to run this test query. Okay, and to check the same stored procedure, but here I am giving a parameter, so for that you may write this or you may not. I mean, if I am writing select start from customers where city equals to Singapore, that is what is equals to this one. So this is similar to this one. I mean, this is similar to this one. Okay, but to execute this you have to write this, right? So this is also working as expected. Okay, now quickly coming to the next stored procedure. Check stored procedure, select all customers by city and PIN by passing input parameter city and PIN code name. Okay, so let me use this. So we also have another stored procedure. First I need to use this call select all customers by city and PIN, which is basically this select all customers by city and PIN. So I am just selecting this and executing this, and it is returning me. Okay, so based on Singapore and based on this code, there is only one record, so it's working fine. Now for this particular stored procedure, I do not need to write this test query. So if I execute this and this, it all remains the same. But for this particular stored procedure, I have to run this test query. Why? Because this needs some parameter. Okay, so to run this stored procedure, either I have to use this or this. Like I have to either give a parameter or I have to run the test query in order to get the results. Right. So done with the basic test cases. So this is also working. See, I have given city name, PIN code. So these are the test data and expected result working as expected. Okay, now coming to a bit complicated case. So in part 4, if you guys check, I have created a scenario where we will be getting the customer ID. Like based on a customer ID, what we are giving, say 141 or 200, whatever, and there are some output parameters: shipped, cancelled, resolved, disputed. Right. So this is the stored procedure. Okay, so suppose let me delete all these previous cases. Okay, so this is the stored procedure. Okay, get order by customer. Okay, so this is basically we needed to get some order, customer order. Okay, customer shipping. See, get customer shipping. Okay, so when we needed to get this get order by customer. Okay, now it should have returned something based on the customer value whatever we created previously. Okay, so get customer shipping, insert supplier product. So these are the two stored procedure. Now using this two to stored procedure, we are creating a third stored procedure, okay, and testing it out. So calling get order by cast. Okay, now let's check what happens with this. So obviously this does not exist. So what we have to do, we have to use this. So shipped, cancelled, resolved, disputed. Okay, so I've selected this particular thing. Okay, I've created, I was trying to test up stored procedure by giving some parameters, but this didn't exist. This didn't exist. Now when I'm trying to select all this output parameters, it is displaying. So after that, what I need to do, I need to give here some test query, and test query regarding this is very important. Then only this stored procedure can understand like exactly what is happening. Okay, so let me make this a bit smaller, or else it will be not possible to understand. Okay, okay, so if I'm selecting this, that means, and running this, that means there, like, you have to understand one thing. These are the two stored procedure which is based on this particular scenario. Okay, which is based on this particular scenario, right? Now as this does not exist, okay, as it does not exist, so I tried to call, but it didn't come, it didn't show because this stored procedure did not exist. Now this stored procedure does not exist. I passed some parameters into it, input parameters and output parameters. Now the output parameters I tried to display, that displayed, and this basically came from the list of all the present data, either like select count as shipped from orders. So from orders, where custom number is equals to this, as shipped. So now it is showing the data. So this is basically, you can say, a random stored procedure we developed and checked, okay, by which, I mean, you can create this also and check, but at runtime we created this as at runtime and checked from the database what is happening. So this is the stored procedure which we never created, but we passed data into it, which basically we got from the database. So this input and output parameters, like this is the input parameter and these are all the output parameters. So this basically we fetch from the database and then we checked. So that is basically showing. Okay, so this is a bit complex. Okay, that is why we require test query for this. So check stored procedure by passing input parameter customer ID, or else if you can create this stored procedure beforehand and just pass the customer ID and check. That is also a different way, like a normal way, but also using this way you can check. Okay, so this is the third case which is also working. Okay, now coming to last but not the least, strict stored procedure get customer shipping by passing customer ID. Okay, so I'm selecting this. Okay, now I'm running this. It's showing 2-day shipping. Why? Because I ran this particular stored procedure, get customer shipping, and into this I passed 112. So that got loaded first, and then when I tried to execute this particular output parameter, then it should be 2-day. Okay, now suppose instead of 112 I'm passing 260. Now copying this and I'm running it. Again when I'm running it, it will be showing 3-day shipping. So this is another way of checking. Okay, so this is another way of checking. So you pass the parameter, okay, then you load the select statement. So then the select statement shows. Okay, now regarding this also, you can use the test query. Okay, so in that case what happens? So it will be displaying all the other details, country and 2-day shipping. Okay, so what you can do, I just selected country. Okay, country, case when country is USA, then 2-day shipping, Canada 3-day shipping, else 5-day shipping, and it is coming based on this customer number. So I can also select 260, and if I do this, it will be showing Canada. So either you can run this, the test query, or you can just give this and basically it will be showing. So just need to run this, select the statement, and again I have to select the statement and basically run this. Okay, so this is the way of checking the stored procedure. Like whatever stored procedures we have, you can create it on beforehand or develop the stored procedures beforehand and then test out by writing this proper test cases. So let me just write out, this one also is working as expected. So the quality analysts or the software testers or the database testers need to create the test cases like this way and basically check it out, and accordingly you will be setting up your priority and status. Okay, so that was it for today. I will be coming up again with another round of video for database testing, again with stored procedures. So there are different types of automations that you can do with stored procedures, so we will be discussing those things also. So hopefully you guys liked it. Please do subscribe, share and like our videos so that people can get help and understand different sections in automation testing or different automations, right? So thank you for watching, guys.